welcome to the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I'm your host, Nick McGowan, and on this show, my guests and I unpack the stories that shape us and the lives we lead on our path to self-mastery. Today on the show, we have G. Scott Graham. Scott is an author, a career coach, and a business coach in Boston, Massachusetts. He's driven to help clients follow their true azimuth, which is different from true north. It means coaching clients to identify the true focus of their life, something that spoke individually to them. It means recognizing the forces that push our lives off course and adjusting to them so you get to exactly where you want to go. It means that when you're 90 years old, you can look back on your life and have a sense of pride, accomplishment, and meaning with no regrets. So let's not wait any longer. Let the games begin. Scott, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Really great. It is really a privilege to be here on your show, Nick.
I appreciate you being here. I know we recently connected. I was looking at a little bit of your background, so I'm excited to get into this. Just from the handful of minutes that we were kind of shooting the shit before we hit record, I feel like we're going to have a pretty damn good conversation. Typically how it goes with this show, we'll get into some wild stuff. But Scott, why don't you kick us off with what you do for a living and one thing that most people don't know about you.
Boy, there's a lot of things that people don't know about me, but I try to make it known, all these little pieces about me. Let's see. I work as a coach. I'm working on number 16 and 17 of books that I've written. I am an EMT. I am a volunteer firefighter. I'm actually an EMT instructor. I teach Tai Chi for the elderly. I run a nonprofit for a farm animal rescue. And I am getting ready to do a Tough Mudder at,
Nice.
Do you know what a Tough Mudder is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, electricity, mud, wires, shit like that. I'm getting ready to do a Tough Mudder again after a two knee replacements, total knee replacements, and I'm doing this Tough Mudder. I was somehow hoodwinked into it, and I feel like I'm like the grandpa of the Tough Mudder. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know if that's good. I don't know if that's bad. but everybody else is like in their 20s and 30s, and I'm 59. I'm like, wow. They're like, don't worry, we'll help you get over the obstacles. I'm like, I don't need help getting over the goddamn obstacles. I just want you to know I'm not running. They're like, why? I'm like, because I have 2 knee replacements, and the doctor was really clear, since I got them replaced at a young age, if I do things like running, I might wear them out. I might not, but I might. And I don't want to have a knee replacement surgery. I mean, they're new, right? It's not like we've been replacing knees since 1855 and can say, oh, they last 150 years. Yeah. So they're like, oh, they're supposed to last for the rest of your life, but they don't last for football players. So all the doctor said to me is, he said, you need to avoid things that go like this with your knees. He said, you can do this, he said, if you can do a triathlon as long as you don't run, you find someone to sub for you on the running section, you can bike and swim. So I'm not running on the Tough Mudder. Are
you going to do like the fast kind of jog?
No, I'm not even going to do. I have to be careful so that I'm not impacting that thing on my knees. So it's even when I hike now, I'm having a difficult time because I have no trouble going uphill. But coming down, when you come down, you usually land on your skeletal system. Right? You take your leg is extended and straight, and your skeletal system takes the full brunt of that force. But I'm working on this kind of going downhill with my legs bent. So it looks like I'm taking a dump when I'm going down the hill with my legs bent, because I'm like 59. I haven't just been doing this, walking down with my legs bent forever. That's why I had to get 2 knee replacements. So it's weird trying to learn that. It's people are like, are you okay? I'm like, yes, I just don't know how to walk. I'm fine.
Just lean into the story and be like, calm down. I'm actively taking a shit. Leave me alone. What are you looking at me for? Can a man walk down a mountain and take a shit?
Man.
Oh, man. All right. So there's all of that. I want to kind of jump into the EMT and the firefighter thing because I can relate to that kind of pretty quickly. My dad and brother are firemen. My brother's an EMT. He's kind of a superhero in many different ways. But that shit just jumped completely over me. Like completely over me. I see fire and I'm like, shit, somebody's got to come put this out. And I've got to maybe help people that are close and get out of here. My dad and brother they don't care where they are. There are stories of my father being out at, having a couple beverages at places and then ending up with an axe in his hand at some point, just helping out the local crew. And they're like,
right.
The fuck are you?
Are they both volunteers?
They were volley and paid.
Okay. You know that for your listeners out there, here's a fact for you to know. Most of the firefighters and EMTs in the United States are volunteers. Mm-hmm. Very, very few of them. I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid a penny. And very, very few people who are out there jumping into fires, running around in traffic, pulling people out of cars, doing CPR covered with blood. There's very few people that are paid because who can pay them, especially in rural America? You can pay them in a big city. If you have a big city with a big tax base, then you can pay them. But if you don't have that, if you want to have coverage in your station 24/7, right? It's not like Emergency or fire department, all these shows that we see on television. It's not like that,
Yeah. It's funny. I'm originally from Philadelphia. My family's still in Philadelphia. I live in Florida now, but I go home every so often, every handful of months, and I'll be shooting the breeze with my dad, and we'll be hanging out, watching TV or something. So, short version of this: over the summer, we were shooting the shit and watching some baseball game or something, and some 9/11 or 911 episode popped up. Like that 911 show and craziness. And I was like, hey, Pop, you watch this? And he instantly was like, fuck all of that. That is so wrong. It's fake, blah, blah, blah. So he's not on the podcast, but can you give his perspective of that? Like why people will look at it and be like, fuck all of it. It's not right.
Because they put all this stuff in for drama. Like, I mean, firefighters do it. It's exciting, but we are erring on the edge of safety. And we never, ever, for example, you see firefighters on TV going around burning, smoldering buildings without their air mask on because you have to see their face, right? And who wants to watch a TV show where there's a multi-million-dollar star going because they have something over their face. So they don't have that on. They don't have, they're not fully in the fire gear because you have to see their flowing hair and their blue eyes or whatever. And I mean, lots of times they even have their fire hat on backwards. But beyond that, the interesting thing, I see this in every single movie, and it's hysterical. Fire hydrants do not, you see when a car runs over a fire hydrant and it goes like that? They don't work. That's not how they work. That's not how they work. Fire hydrants are not under pressure. And anybody who has been in a city where you have to get the fire hydrant going knows you have to open the fire and then you have to actually turn a valve. So if you run over a fire hydrant, it is not going to go straight up in the air all the time. That's completely fake. It's completely fake. So, I just become, Nick, I just became a firefighter instructor. Not a fire instructor. I became a fire instructor a few years ago, and I just became an EMT instructor. And part of my mission is to, this is about mindset and self-mastery, right? So part of my mindset is service and really trying to have a ripple effect on the world. And part of that piece of me being an EMT instructor is to get more people trained in EMS so that at least they can show up and do CPR and help their neighbors who are bleeding while the ambulance is on the way. Because it's even with our advancements in technology and our advancements in communication and our advancements in vehicles, it's still like 20, sometimes 30 minutes before help arrives. It'd be nice if it was 5 minutes before help arrives and then they can hand it off to the big boys. So that's part
Well,
of
it
my
is in the TV
hope.
shows. It's 5 minutes in the shows. So come on,
True.
you guys got something to live up to.
Yeah, right.
Totally kidding. Totally kidding. Firefighter friends and EMS friends, don't kick my ass.
You're going to get a bunch of hate mail.
Yeah, please.
Not me.
Just hold the hate mail. I love you
Nick
guys.
McGowan,
Yeah, totally.
email him.
Oh man. So where did that all come from though? Like why get into the spot where service is important to you, but that not only has it been important over the course of your life, but as you've already stated a couple times, you're close to 60 years old. So now you're actually helping the next generation of people.
Right.
That's a separate sort of deal. But what has led you to that point where you're like, I want to do all of these things to now create other leaders?
I think a part of that is I'm running out of gas. So
with your knees.
Right. And so one of the best ways that I can be of service is to help other people carry that on. That's one of the reasons I'm writing all these books. I have this goal, which some say is audacious, but I have this goal that I want to write 100 books before I die. So I'm not even halfway there. I'm not even a quarter of the way there because I've only written 15. But I have a lot to say, and I think that's the same drive to have an impact. So many people live. It's really a fucked up world that we live in so many ways, because people think that success is about having the biggest car, the biggest jet, the biggest house, the most vacations, the yacht, the this, the and then maybe once you've accumulated that, I'm going to set up a foundation that's going to help give money. It's just so baloney. It's just really the best thing that we can do is to really help each other. When it really comes down to it, what else is there? Right? You want to look back at your life and say, oh yeah, look at that. Look at the nice motorcycles. I have a collection of historic motorcycles, 50 of them in my garage. That's an achievement. But to be able to say that, I've trained and I'm going to have an impact on people after I'm gone because of people that I've trained. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yes, that totally is pretty cool. Now, as a mindset show and about self-mastery, which is basically discipline, would you say that some of that comes from the ego, or is there an innate pull to always serve people? Like, I know the people that just serve because if they didn't, it's like they would die. That's their water. Right. Do you feel some of that's ego, or do you feel that some of that is like, I just need to do this?
It can be ego, and that's a risk. That's really a risk, because we can get attached to that ego just as much as we can get attached to the motorcycles, the yachts, and this. Right? Yeah. It's like, I have an endowment to the school, and now they have the G. Scott Graham School of Psychology or whatever with big gold letters printed across, and I better spell it correctly too, by the way. That really is the driver of the ego. You get invited to be on this board of directors and that board of directors, and then, it just puffs you up. And then you can get attached to that same type of stuff and want to have that. Yeah. It's just like the motorcycles, or the yachts or whatever, or a string of achievements, or having, your name up in lights. And that's a risk. But for me, that's not that way. I'm talking about it here on the podcast, and I talk about it with people because that's who I am, but it's not a driver of look at who Scott Graham is. I'm really just a guy.
Yeah. And, people look at celebrities, they look at athletes, and they forget that they're just people. For the most part, some of them are just geeks, nerds, right? Whatever, just like the rest of us. Right. They have their little quirks and things that they get into. With any sort of success, no matter what level, you could be at Jeff Bezos level, or you could be somebody who's having a little bit of success in their little cubicle at work. Whatever that looks like, that ego can still kind of creep in. So how do you manage your mindset in those sort of moments, and how do you help other people do it? Like, what sort of advice would you give for that?
I think the first of all, recognizing that there's an attachment to that ego and who I am.
Mm.
And that's a really big piece. So and that's true for any issue that you're having with your mindset, recognizing that piece. And then the other aspect around that is being aware of your foibles, that you're not perfect, right? We could, if you want, I could talk about all the dastardly things my shithead brain says to me. Like you probably have an evil Nick that like says, you know what? My brain says things to me that I would never, ever tolerate from another human being. Like I would never let anybody get away with the shit that my brain.
There'd be a restraining order and all this other shit.
Right. And so, not purposely ratcheting that up, but looking at the things that I still have to do to develop and grow and and move forward, because every single person has challenges, and the second we move away from that piece and don't appreciate that, we lose a touch of we lose touch with our humanity.
Man, that thin line of the humanity and the pursuit of perfection, where everybody's trying to be better and better and better and better and better. You're trying to pursue this perfect life. Same time, people at times, and they're like, oh, I don't know, I'm only human. But there's such a difference from that. I'm aiming for perfection, and then, I fucked up, and I'm only human.
Right.
But there's no accountability unless it's like right in the middle with that balance.
Right.
So how do you find balance through life?
I think could I address another piece, because I actually have some guilt about this, and this is a piece that I think is inherently screwed up in the coaching field, whether it's career coaching or life coaching is the worst, and I coach people, right? And so this is my confession to folks, in that one of the things that you hear from coaches, especially life coaches, but you hear it from career and business and other, is that your life's going to be magical from coaching, and they want you to develop your vision, and the more clear your vision is, the more clear, as like Simon Sinek says, your why is. You're going to then build this life that is just utopian and blissful and happy, and you are just, there's going to be rainbows coming out your ears, you're going to be farting butterflies and puppy dogs, and it's just going to be, you're going to be high all the time. And we talk with that. Obviously, I'm parodying that in this conversation, but there is this push to be better and more and happy, and this bill of goods gets sold, and inherently that makes people more unhappy. We think that the clearer our vision is, the better it is, but you don't hit it, and how do you feel? Unhappy. You don't get it, it goes away, and how do you feel? Unhappy. And so the real key mindset is not about happiness, it's about equanimity. Equanimity is key. And that's probably a word your listeners have never even heard before. They're like, what is that? I got to look it up on Google. What does that mean?
That's a 50-cent word.
And it's not a 50-cent. It should be a word that everybody is familiar with, because unlike other emotions like happiness or anger, equanimity is a feeling, but equanimity is also a skill set. And they kind of go hand in hand. You really can't, happiness is a feeling, but happiness isn't really a skill set. You can work to try to be happy, but it's not really something you could say, how you work? I'm working on my skill of happiness. But you can actually work on in expanding your skills to be equanimous with things. I was talking to a friend today, and then I'm going to shut up and let you ask your other question, because I'm probably off on some tangent. You're like, shut up. I was talking to a friend.
No, we're good. I'll pull you back.
I was talking to a friend today, and she said to me, she's struggling with some dynamics going on in her life. And she said to me when we were talking, we're both familiar with this, she said, Yata Bhuta, which is a Tibetan Buddhist Pali term, which translates to as it is. Yata Bhuta, as it is. Not as you would like it to be, And if we are able to cultivate a mindset where we embrace yata bhuta as it is, and that skill to stay that way when we're feeling sucked in by the ego or cars or this, or stay that way when we're sucked in by everything going to hell in a handbasket, right? To have that balance, that's really the key. That's really the key. And that's really accepting things as they are. And that doesn't mean, I don't give a shit about anything. I'm just going to get high and wasted. And it doesn't mean that at all. It's not indifference. Equanimity is not indifference.
I think the American version of that is, it is what it is. But a lot of people take that and will kind of fall back to but I'm only human sort of thing. They're like, I don't know, because it's just a throwaway almost. So how do you suggest that people would hold themselves accountable with it is what it is and understand the contentment of that and the equanimity of it?
The interesting thing about that is that you cannot say it is what it is and expect that that's going to bring that mindset about. Because, I have a friend who has recently gone through some struggles, and she says, all this all the time. It is what it is. Very similar, or yata bhuta. And I've pointed out, I'm like, just because you say it doesn't necessarily, I can see that you really don't appreciate what's going on here. There's like imbalance, right? You can be like, fuck them. I don't give a shit about that asshole. It is what it is. Well, clearly, if it is what it is, you would not say, fuck them. I don't give a shit about that asshole, right? It just wouldn't be that way. Yeah. And so how do you develop that peace? And the most powerful way to develop that peace is through a technique called Vipassana meditation. There's lots of things you can do at the surface level and all this other stuff, but Vipassana meditation and sitting down and practicing that skill set builds that skill on the micro level. Without any interruptions, without any distractions, without any other things going on in your head. It's just focusing on accepting things as they are. And if you practice that piece of it, and you can do it at home, you can do it in the subway, you can do it. It's hard to do in the subway. You can do it in the grocery store. It's hard to do in the grocery store. It's better to do it when there's no distractions, but to just exist with life as it is. That's the skill set that comes, and then that skill set builds to these bigger things, the bigger mindset. You cannot. One of the mistakes I think people make all the time. You've probably heard of cognitive behavioral therapy. Or affirmations, which is a piece of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's such bullshit. You probably have had somebody who's on before me, or someone's coming after me that's going to say affirmations are great, and so you're going to be like, there was this guest a couple of weeks ago that said it was all bullshit. What do you think of that?
Someone said bullshit,
and this is why. Because you can go because it's because of that evil voice in our head. Right? Is that you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm a loving person. I'm a joyous person. I'm a giving person. I love myself. I love my body. And every time you say that voice in your head is saying something. It's like it's saying something totally opposite. It's like, what's that superhero show with the black goo? Tom Hardy was the character. Venom. It's like having that thing in your head, that venom thing in your head that's saying, no, let's go this, right? Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And so you say, I'm going to be a nice person. And then the evil thing is saying, oh, no, you're not. You're not a nice person because of this and this and this and this and this. And who's going to win that argument? And then you say, I love myself and I cherish my body. And then the evil thing's going to say, yeah, except your fat ass and, your saggy balls or your tits or whatever. It's it's preloaded, and it knows every single button to push on you. So we can say, oh yeah, the technology about affirmations is great, but it overlooks the fact that in our mind is, this demon spawn that is just waiting to argue the opposite with us. So the best thing you can do is just say, shut up. Literally. I mean, say to yourself, it's like having a kid who's arguing with you in the grocery store. They want this and they want that, and they want that. And you're like, shut up. You're not getting it. We're going. Period. No, I'm not even talking about it. We're going. And if saying it silently to yourself doesn't work, as long as you're not on a subway and in some bus station or airplane, definitely not if you're grocery store. An airline. Should you sitting next to somebody, should not start saying this out loud. But if you're in your privacy of your own home, or you're going for a walk in the woods and that voice is going on, it is more effective than affirmations to say out loud, will you just shut up? I'm not listening to you. Shut up. And cut it off, because we will never win the argument, no matter what the cognitive behavioral people want to brainwash us to think. Right? You know that. People know that inherently, because we've argued with that thing in our head for years, and we've not won.
I think people look for the thing that they can sink their teeth into, where they can go, oh, this is the thing. I actually had a conversation with somebody recently talking about addiction, and they were like, I don't really believe that it's a disease, because those people actually chose to do those things. It's now a dis-ease within their system, but it's not something they can just lean a crutch on. And to some people, that's fucking wild. They're like, oh, totally, it's a disease. Other people are like, I think you're onto something. So I think it's all kind of the package of the thing. Hell, even religion. They go, here's the package of this thing that is really just faith-based to help you be a better person and make smarter decisions. But you need this box, because people are like, well, I don't know what it is. Oh, it's a box. I can sit my ass in that box. Great. Sit your ass in the box. Other people can look at the box. They can inspect the box. They can look around it. They can ask other people, like, hey, what is this box to you? So I think there's those little activities in those moments where the affirmation, yes, if you're just saying words and in the back of your mind, it's like, fuck you, God, then you're like, what the fuck? But at the same time, I've realized going through affirmations and all that there's a depth that you can get to where the body feels it. You have that sensation that it starts to actually get into the subconscious. But it's hard for people to get to that point. Even sitting there and doing meditation of just understanding it is what it is and having that feeling of just being content in that moment. There's that gray area when people start something and then they go, it's not really working, I don't know, and they just pull the fuck out. Or they get through it and go, because you've experienced that feeling, I'm sure of it, where you just embody something, even to yourself, where you're like, you're going to be confident walking into this fucking meeting. And you own it and you walk then. People have to attach all that together. But that might take a level of intelligence or wondering, at least to go, there are multiple pieces here. So how, in simple terms, would you explain to somebody to go ahead and do that for themselves, to combine those pieces to help them?
The best thing you can do if you're working to combine pieces is to get it out of your head and get it written down on a plan. It doesn't make and handwriting is better, in my opinion, than typing it up, because we just feel so detached from the keyboard. But you sit down and scribble out some plan on what you need to do and what efforts you're going to make to move in that direction. And then if you can have an honest conversation with somebody and find somebody to hold you accountable around those pieces, then you can really move forward. That might be a coach. That could be a friend. It could be, a colleague. You were talking about addiction earlier. I mean, that's one of the strengths of AA. If you have an honest relationship and you're open and exposed to your sponsor, Your sponsor can hold you accountable to all those demons that they know are there because they've had it themselves. But that only happens if you're honest and bring integrity to that relationship. If you don't, then everything's going to fall apart.
I think that goes for all relationships, no matter what. Like if you walk into something and you're not with integrity, you're not being honest, how can you expect any of it to be successful at all?
Right.
And I find that there are times where I have conversations with people where I spend a lot of time to help them break through on their own to be able to go, fuck it, fine, I'm here.
Right.
Oh, I'm here. Yeah, let's do this thing.
Right.
Like now I'm ready. You're like, good. Now you can actually learn. Now you can actually make the change.
We spend so much time, Nick, thinking about, because we have attachment, because we don't have equanimity, we're thinking about the outcome that we want and speaking in a way that totally lacks integrity because we have some goal in mind. It's really manipulative and skeevy when you think about it. We do that with our friends. We do that with our spouses. We do that with our kids. We do that with our parents. And everybody else does the same thing with us because we're all, and then they're like, oh, I got to take a class on emotional intelligence so I can be better. And really all emotional intelligence is have integrity and don't be so skeevy with your communications and your approaches to other human beings. You have to be able to break through those parts so that you have authentic relationships. And recognizing it and recognizing that you do it is the first step. It's like we were talking about AA. It's like recognizing you have a disease is the first step to fixing it, right? It's like once you're aware that you have a disease, it's like I'm aware I have high blood pressure. Well, I have now two choices. I can continue to have Cheetos and vanilla ice cream sprinkled with Cheetos. And
I was going to say same time because that sounds like a Frosties and French fries sort of situation.
Or I can eat healthy and work on my diabetes. I have a choice there. I have a disease, and I now have a choice on how to treat it. The same thing with alcohol. I have a disease. I can continue to drink, or I continue to shoot heroin, or any of these other pieces, or I can, embrace, sobriety and figure out a path, whatever that means for me to move forward in a whole sober life. And the same thing is true with integrity. Once you have that, if you can break through with another person without the games. I was lucky to be able to do that with one person in my life. And we had a great relationship, and we're able to really call each other out on those games. I let him do it to me. I did it and he did it, and I did it with him, and it was really, really helpful. And that's not many other people I do that with.
Oh yeah, it can definitely take a lot to allow people into whatever your inner circle is. And to allow those sort of people, that's a tighter circle because you sometimes need to allow those people actually into your space. Now, if that is a coach or an accountability friend or a colleague or whatever, I think it's a matter of being able to pick those people properly. But it takes both people to be open. So I think at the core of it, people need to be aware of what their problems are. If you think of the diseases and things like you're talking about, your Cheetos and ice cream problem together may not be a problem. No, it totally is. But if you think of like those people that are in those situations, it may not be just the thing in front of them that's a problem.
Exactly.
It's the things that are behind them, the things that they've done that are the problems. So how do you work with your clients to be able to get them to unearth those things past the point of just here's a surfacey level and actually telling you the innermost shit that they deal with?
Trust takes a while to build. Once trust builds and you've established a relationship with someone that you can be honest with, then you can really open up. If people come to me as a coach and they're very surface level with stuff. Because one of the things we do very, very early on is we build this image that we were talking about ego earlier. We build this image of who Nick is. Nick is this, Nick is that, Nick is this, da 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 da. And then the second thing we do is we want to take that image and build it, whether it's right or wrong, whatever that image is that we're attached to, we build that image in other people's minds. We want other people, your spouse, your husband, your daughter, your son, your mother, your father. This is who Nick is. This is what Nick's all about. It's like we've got this PR branding. It's like Facebook on crack that we do. We're doing Facebook long before there was Facebook and trying to give people this image of who the right Nick is, who the good Nick. Nick is Nick. This is who Nick is, and anything that, and it's like having it the altar and church of Nick, and we want people to praise that idol, and we want people to love that idol, and we want people to cherish that idol, and so part of the shift comes recognizing that image of Nick is not who you are. Really, it's created in your mind, and you're putting that out there for other people to worship and praise and enjoy and love. And then the second thing, that the other factor that happens with this, it's closely related to this image of me and I, and that is my and mine. So my car, my son, my daughter, my parents, right? You see something happen to somebody else's son or daughter, and you're like, no, whatever, But if my son does that or my daughter does that, that's a different piece, because it relates back to this the Church of Nick, and you've created, because this is not how people act in the Church of Nick, right? Not my son, not my daughter, not right? It's right. That's a pathetically trained dog. But my dog, right? Somebody came over here and came here to the animal rescue a couple of weeks ago, and she had this dog in her car. This dog was freaking crazy. She brought it out, and it was going after one of the animals. It's pulling on the leash. She goes, my dog is well trained. And I turned to her and I said, you know what? Everybody says their dog is well trained. No, there's very few people that says my dog's crazy. Or they're like, oh yeah, it's the best dog on the planet, right? There is one person. They were here helping out at the rescue this weekend. Emma Gaffney. She's got a little crazy little dog named Chainsaw, and that dog is it's whack. That dog's on Prozac and all kinds of other meds and stuff, and shakes like this when you go to touch it. And I mean, she's like, no, my dog has issues. So we kept it away from all the other dogs and animals and everything while she was here. Cause she's the only person I know that has not said my dog's the best dog on the planet.
Well, it sounds like she couldn't really hide it. If she was like, no, the dog's all right, you'd be like, there's something wrong.
Yeah, the dog has an overbite like this. It's growls at you when you go by, but still, it's my dog. If something were to happen to that dog, for her, that would be a core struggle for her, right? She loves that dog.
Man, it's those are things, the attachments that we gain throughout our life that we think make us who we are. I think we experience at different times, and I'm experiencing this even as of late. The unfolding of who you actually are, and figuring out who you actually are, and then showing people like, hey, this is me. Kind of take me or leave me. Part of this is the fucking podcast, or as you put it, the Church of Nick, which is not associated with the podcast. Completely different. They're non-exempt. Whole deal. But really figuring out the stuff that you have internally, that I think that aligns with you or doesn't align with you, starts with, as you were saying, just that awareness. You got to be able to look at that shit first. And I appreciate I'm sure there are tons of stories we get into with you that we haven't even touched the surface on yet. But we're about at our time, man. So one of the things I would definitely want to ask you, that I ask everybody that's on the show, what's one piece of advice you'd give to somebody that's on their path towards self-mastery?
Live your life so that you would not have any regrets. And let me tell you let me be clear on what that means. That does not mean live your life so that you are just off the deep end doing drugs, bungee jumping, and all of this other stuff. That means that if somebody close behind to you died, that means if you died tomorrow and you could send a message to somebody else, you should say, don't feel sad for me, because I live the best life that I can. I have no regrets about any of the decisions I made along my life. I don't have no regrets about any of the things I've said to people along my life. And if you can live your life that way so that you have no regrets or things that you say, I wish I did this. If only I had done that. I should have done that. If you can live your life so that those words and phrases don't enter it at all, you are on your way to true equanimity.
Great way to pull that back around. So thank you for tying that loose end with the equanimity. So Scott, tell us, where can people connect with you? Where can they find you and your plethora of books?
So all you have to do is go to Google and Google G. Scott Graham. There we go. And you will see all these books just waiting for you to go through and get. And there's more. Those are the ones that I have floating around that are in print. And those are my props. I've been so waiting, Nick, to pull them out because I'm attached. These are the core pamphlets of the Church of Scott, right? So this is what we sing and praise in the Church of Scott. So you can go to gscottgraham.com and you will see tons of links there. You'll see this podcast there. You'll see links to other social media places. Just go to that, and that will take you everywhere.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
What a pleasure. You really provide a great service out there to really help people be aware of how this impacts the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Another great conversation on today's episode of the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I have to say, the biggest takeaway from this conversation for me is equanimity. Even if you're not familiar with the term, you're definitely familiar with the definition, because I believe it's something you and I are both striving for. Equanimity is mental calmness, composure, and evenness of temper, especially in a difficult situation. Is this something you're striving for? If so, how's it going? I'd love to hear about it. Hear about the journey that you're managing your mindset and striving towards self-mastery and equanimity. So, what did you think about today's episode? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the conversation we got into. And if you enjoyed the episode, please go over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and leave a 5-star review. If this episode opened your eyes and made you think or smile at all, I'm sure it's going to do the same thing for a friend of yours. And if you really enjoyed the show today, go ahead and share it with that specific friend that just popped in your mind. Yeah, that person right then. Just go ahead and share it with them. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. And check out the show notes for more information, contact info for Scott, and check out other episodes on the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show.com, as well as our YouTube channel. You can just search The Mindset and Self-Mastery Show, and all of those videos are going to pop up for you. And thanks again, Scott, for being real, for being honest, for being funny and vulnerable with us, and for sharing some really great wisdom. I'd like to also thank our sponsors, the Manly Club and the Powerhouse Men Brotherhood. Men, do you consider yourself to be a powerhouse man? The criteria for becoming one is simple. Live with virtue and do good work. You see, a powerhouse man builds his life. He doesn't settle for it. He attacks mediocrity at the root, and that's exactly what we do in the Powerhouse Men's Brotherhood. Visit themanlyclub.com for more details. And with that, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being with us. Thank you so much for showing back up and listening to these. I hope you're getting something out of this, and I'd love to hear from you about it. And with that, remember, your mindset matters, and so do you.